The dining room fell silent except for the clinking of silverware. My sister Lauren's words hung in the air like poison gas. My 10-year-old son Marcus stopped eating mid-bite, his fork frozen. "What did you just say?" Kept my voice level. Lauren leaned back, swirling her wine glass with that familiar smirk. "I'm just saying single parenthood has its challenges. Marcus seems a bit behind, don't you think? Maybe if he had a father figure. He has a mother who loves him." I cut her off, reaching over to squeeze Marcus's shoulder. He was staring at his plate now, his ears red. Of course. Lauren's husband, David, chimed in, not looking up from his steak. "But statistics show that children from two-parent households perform better academically, socially." "David's right," my mother interrupted, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. "We're just concerned about Marcus's development. He seems so withdrawn compared to Lauren's children." I watched my nephew and niece, both younger than Marcus, playing on their tablets at the table, something I'd never allow. But apparently they were the gold standard of child rearing. "Marcus is doing fine," I said firmly. "He's on the honor roll, he plays piano, he volunteers at the animal shelter every weekend." "That's wonderful, dear," my father said in the dismissive tone he'd used my entire life. "But Lauren makes a valid point. The boy needs stability. He needs structure. Maybe if you'd thought about that before." "Before what, Dad?" My voice was still calm, but something cold was settling in my chest. "Before my husband died in a car accident 4 years ago?" The table went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "We're not talking about that," Lauren said, her voice taking on a theatrical sympathy that made my skin crawl. "We're talking about now. About what's best for Marcus. And honestly, living in that tiny apartment, working those long hours at the bank, barely scraping by." "I'm not scraping by." "Really?" Lauren raised an eyebrow. "Because Mom mentioned you couldn't afford Marcus's vacation. We went to Europe for 3 weeks. The kids loved Barcelona." Marcus pushed his plate away, the sound harsh in the quiet room. "I'm not hungry." "See?" Lauren gestured toward him like he was evidence in a trial. "This is exactly what I mean. The attitude, the sensitivity. Kids need consistency, they need examples of success, they need—" I opened my purse and pulled out the manila folder I'd been carrying for 3 days, ever since the bank notified me of the upcoming foreclosure. I'd debated bringing it tonight. I'd almost left it in the car. "They need what, exactly?" I placed the folder on the table. Lauren barely glanced at it. "They need to see what a stable household looks like. 2 parents, a nice home, financial security." "Jennifer," my mother warned. "Lauren's just trying to help." "Help?" I smiled and it felt like my face might crack. "Is that what this is?" "Don't be dramatic," Lauren sighed. "We're family. We're allowed to have concerns. And quite frankly, if you can't handle a little constructive criticism—" "Your mortgage is 3 months overdue," I said quietly, opening the folder. "The bank sent the foreclosure notice last Tuesday." Lauren's wine glass stopped mid-swirl. "What? Your mortgage?" I pulled out the first document, sliding it across the table. "The one on that beautiful 4-bedroom colonial you love to post about on social media. 3 months late. Total arrears of $17,462. David's face went white. "How do you—" "I work at the bank, David. I'm not a teller. I'm the regional loan officer. Have been for 2 years. My father leaned forward. "Jennifer, what are you—" "Let me finish, Dad." I kept my voice steady, almost conversational. "Lauren, do you want to tell everyone why your mortgage is 3 months late? Or should I?" Lauren's hands were shaking now, her wine glass forgotten. "This is private information. You can't just—" "David lost his job 6 months ago," I continued, pulling out more papers. "He hasn't told anyone. Lauren doesn't work because, as she loves to remind me, she chose family over career. Their savings ran out in August. They've been living on credit cards since then." My mother gasped. "Lauren, is this true?" "It's temporary," Lauren said quickly, but her voice was thin. "David has interviews lined up. We're just in a transitional. You're about to lose your house." I laid out the foreclosure timeline. "You have 45 days before the bank takes possession. Probably less, actually, since you haven't responded to any of their notices." "This is cruel," my father said, his face reddening. "Exposing your sister's private business like this." Is it more cruel than mocking my dead husband? I asked softly. More cruel than calling my son a mess in front of the entire family? More cruel than the past 4 years of subtle digs about my parenting, my job, my life? The silence was absolute now. I've sat through Sunday dinners listening to Lauren talk about her perfect life, her perfect house, her perfect marriage, I continued. I've watched Marcus internalize every comment about single parents, every implication that he's somehow less than because his father died. I've smiled through it all. Jennifer, my mother started. I'm not finished. I pulled out another set of documents. Do you know who's been paying part of your mortgage, Lauren? For the past 3 months. Lauren's eyes widened. No. $1,200 a month, I said. Transferred from my account to yours. You probably didn't even notice because it goes straight to the mortgage company. Why would you? David stammered. Because you're family, I said simply. Because despite everything, I didn't want to see my niece and nephew lose their home. Because I thought maybe, eventually, you'd stop treating me like a failure and see that I was managing just fine. Marcus was staring at me now, his expression a mixture of confusion and something that might have been pride. But here's the thing about bank transfers. I pulled out the final document. They can be stopped. I called on Friday. The last payment I made is being reversed. It should process by tomorrow morning. You can't do that, Lauren whispered. I already did. I gathered the papers back into the folder. So that brings your arrears to $18,662. Due immediately or the foreclosure proceeds. My father slammed his hand on the table. This is vindictive. This is me standing up for my son, I said, my voice finally rising. This is me refusing to let you people make him feel small anymore. This is me reminding all of you that I don't need your approval, your advice, or your pity. We were just trying to help, my mother said weakly. No, you were trying to feel superior. I stood up, pulling Marcus with me. There's a difference. Lauren's face went from white to red. You're going to let us lose our house over a few comments? A few comments? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lauren, you've spent 4 years making my son feel inadequate. 4 years of implying that he's damaged goods because he doesn't have a father. Do you know he asked me last month if it was his fault that his dad died? Because he must have done something wrong to deserve being just half a family? My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Those were your words, by the way, I said to Lauren. From Easter dinner. Half a family. Marcus remembered. I didn't mean. You did mean it. I picked up my purse. You meant every word, every implication, every smug little comment about my tiny apartment, my long hours, and my scraped-together life. Well, here's something for you to think about while you're packing up your perfect house. I own my apartment, paid in full. No mortgage. And those long hours. I'm the youngest regional loan officer the bank's ever had. I make 6 figures. I could have bought a house twice the size of yours. Then why? David started. Because I wanted Marcus to grow up humble, I said. I wanted him to understand the value of hard work, of earning things, of not measuring his worth by the size of his house or the price of his clothes. I wanted him to be kind, empathetic, and grateful. But I'm done letting you people mistake humility for weakness. I looked at my father. And Dad, before you say anything else about what Marcus needs, you should know that he's been accepted into the accelerated program at Edison Academy. Full scholarship, based on his academic performance and his essay about overcoming loss. He starts in January. My father's mouth opened and closed. The withdrawn boy you're so concerned about? He wrote an essay that made 3 admissions counselors cry. About his father, about grief, about finding strength in adversity. About having a mother who works hard and loves him and teaches him that family isn't about perfection, it's about showing up. Marcus squeezed my hand. You want to know what Marcus really needs? I asked the silent table. He needs people who see his value, who celebrate his strengths instead of highlighting his losses, who understand that being raised by one present parent is better than being raised by 2 parents who are too busy maintaining appearances to actually parent. I looked at Lauren, who was crying now, mascara running down her face. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered Marcus pushing his plate away, his small voice saying he wasn't hungry. You have 45 days, I said. Maybe David can find a job in that time. Maybe you can liquidate some assets. Maybe you can borrow from your perfect friends with their perfect lives. But you won't be borrowing from me. Not anymore. Jennifer, please. My mother reached for me. You can't just. Let it go, my father said quietly, but he was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Might have been respect. I've let it go for 4 years, Dad, I said. I've let go of every insult, every implication, every judgment. I've let Marcus absorb your disappointment in me, your pity, your condescension. But tonight, when my sister looked at my son and called him a mess, I realized I've been letting go of the wrong things. I should have been holding on to my anger. I should have been protecting my son from your toxic perfectionism. I should have stopped coming to these dinners the first time Lauren made Marcus feel small. So yes, Dad, I'm letting it go. I'm letting go of this family's opinion of me. I'm letting go of the need for your approval. I'm letting go of the guilt I've carried for not being who you wanted me to be. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turning it toward Lauren. See this? This is my savings account. $230,000. I could pay off your mortgage tomorrow and barely feel it. But I won't. Because my son is watching and I need him to see that you don't reward cruelty with kindness. You don't enable bullies even if they're family. We're not bullies, Lauren sobbed. You're worse, I said. You're bullies who think you're being helpful. That's the most dangerous kind. I looked at each of them one final time, my parents sitting frozen in their chairs, David staring at his empty plate, Lauren crying into her napkin, my niece and nephew finally looking up from their tablets with confused expressions. Marcus and I won't be coming to Sunday dinners anymore, I said. Maybe once you've figured out how to treat people with basic respect we can try again. But until then, enjoy your meal. Enjoy your judgment. Enjoy your superiority. I started toward the door, Marcus's hand in mine. Jennifer, my mother called after us. You're making a mistake. I turned back one last time. No, Mom. The mistake was letting this go on for so long. The mistake was thinking that being family meant accepting mistreatment. The mistake was teaching my son that love means tolerating people who make you feel small. But we're family, she whispered. Family is supposed to lift you up, I said. Not tear you down to feel better about themselves. As we walked to the car, Marcus finally spoke. Mom. Yeah, buddy. That was really cool. I laughed and it felt like something breaking loose in my chest. You think so? Yeah. You stood up for us. He paused. But Mom, were you really paying Aunt Lauren's mortgage? I was. Why? I unlocked the car and we both got in. Because I hoped that if I helped her she'd eventually see that I wasn't the failure she thought I was. That maybe she'd be kinder. But she wasn't. No. She wasn't. I started the engine. Sometimes people need to feel superior to someone else to feel good about themselves. And I let myself be that someone for too long. Are they really going to lose their house? I thought about it as we pulled out of the driveway. Probably not. Your grandfather will bail them out. He always does. Then why did you tell them all that stuff? Because they needed to know the truth. They needed to know that their judgment was based on assumptions, not reality. And you needed to see that we're doing just fine, Marcus. Better than fine. He was quiet for a moment. I never thought I was a mess. My heart clenched. You're not. You're perfect exactly as you are. I know, he said simply. I was just sad because Aunt Lauren said it. But I didn't believe her. I glanced over at him. This resilient, incredible kid who'd lost his father and never once let it define him. When did you get so wise? He shrugged. I learned from you. We drove home in comfortable silence, leaving behind the perfect house, the perfect family, the perfect illusion. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Texts from my mother, my father, even Lauren. I didn't look at them. Mom. Marcus said as we pulled into our apartment complex. Yeah. Can we order pizza and watch a movie? I smiled. Absolutely. And Mom? I'm glad it's just us. Me too, buddy. Me too. As we walked up to our small apartment, I realized something. I'd spent 4 years trying to prove I was enough. But I'd been enough all along. The folder sat in my purse, evidence of secrets and struggles I'd uncovered. But the real revelation wasn't about Lauren's mortgage or my job or my savings. It was simpler. Some battles aren't worth fighting. But some battles, the ones for your child's dignity, their self-worth, their understanding that love doesn't come with conditions. Those are worth everything. I'd held on to it too long, all that anger and hurt. But now I was letting it go for real. Not the anger at their treatment, that was justified, but the need for their approval, their acceptance, their validation. Marcus and I were enough. We'd always been enough. And anyone who couldn't see that didn't deserve a seat at our table anyway. My daughter Emily stared at her plate, her fork frozen. The Sunday dinner table went quiet. What did you just say? I kept my voice level, setting down my fork. My sister Jennifer leaned back, her wine glass dangling from her fingers. Oh, come on. We're all thinking it. The kid barely talks, draws strange pictures all day. It's not normal for a 10-year-old. Emily's shoulders hunched. Her fingers gripped the table, knuckles white. Jennifer. My mother's voice carried a warning. I'm saying what everyone's too polite to mention. Jennifer sipped her wine. Maybe if Sarah actually parented, Emily would have friends. Would fit in. My father cleared his throat. Let's change the subject. No, I looked at Jennifer. Tell me more about parenting. She rolled her eyes. Don't be defensive. I'm helping. My boys are thriving. Honor roll, soccer captain, student council. They're well adjusted because Mark and I set expectations. Her twin sons sat across from Emily wearing matching smirks. One whispered to the other and they both snickered. Is that right? I sipped my water slowly. The boys are doing well? Exceptionally well. Jennifer puffed with pride. Unlike some children who live in fantasy worlds instead of developing real skills. Emily pushed back from the table. May I be excused? Finish your dinner, sweetheart. I kept my eyes on Jennifer. See? Can't even handle a little constructive criticism. Jennifer gestured with her wine glass. That's the problem right there. You coddle her, Sarah. The real world isn't going to be so gentle. My brother Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His wife, Lisa, studied her plate with intense fascination. Nobody wanted to get involved as usual. Jennifer. My mother tried again. This isn't appropriate. Oh, mother, stop. Someone needs to say it. Emily's almost 11 and acts like she's 6. She needs help probably. But Sarah's too busy to notice. My little job. I let that sit. What exactly do you think Emily should be doing differently? I asked. Participating. Socializing. Normal kid things. Jennifer waved her hand dismissively. Instead, she sits in corners drawing her weird little pictures. The teachers probably think she's troubled. The teachers. I nodded. What do your boys' teachers think? Jennifer's smile faltered. What? Their teachers. The feedback you're getting from school. Their teachers love them. But her voice lost confidence. Why? Just conversation. I cut my chicken and chewed slowly. Since we're discussing our children's education. How are things at Westbrook Academy? The private school's name hung in the air. Jennifer's fingers tightened around her wine glass. Fine. Everything's fine. Really? I tilted my head. That's interesting because I heard there might be some issues. Academic integrity concerns. Mark, Jennifer's husband, spoke for the first time. Where did you hear that? Around. I took another bite. Small community. Prestigious school. Word travels. There are no issues. Jennifer's voice had an edge. The boys are great. Someone's spreading rumors. I looked at her twins. They'd stopped smirking. Must be mistaken then. I could have sworn I heard something about plagiarism. And cheating on midterm exams. But if you say everything's fine. Jennifer's face went pale. Who told you that? So there are issues. I set down my fork. Interesting that you failed to mention them while you were critiquing my parenting. That's completely different. It's a misunderstanding. Is it? I kept my tone conversational. Buying essays online seems pretty straightforward. Not much room for misunderstanding there. The table went silent. My father stopped eating. Tom stared at me with wide eyes. How do you know about that? Mark's voice was tight. I have my sources. I looked at Emily, who had lifted her head slightly and was watching. The school takes academic dishonesty very seriously from what I understand. Especially repeat offenses. It's being handled. Jennifer's hand shook slightly as she set down her wine glass. The school is working with us. Are they? I folded my napkin. That's generous of them considering the evidence. The matching essays from online paper mills. The identical test answers. The timestamps showing the boys accessed restricted materials during exams. Jennifer pushed back from the table. You need to stop. Why? I thought we were having a conversation about parenting and children's development. About real-world consequences. I looked at my daughter. Emily, honey, what did you get on your last English essay? A+. Her voice was barely a whisper. And that was your own work? She nodded. Original analysis? Your own words. Yes, Mom. I turned back to Jennifer. See, my daughter might be quiet. She might spend her time drawing instead of playing soccer. But she's honest. He does her own work. She has integrity. This is not the same thing. Jennifer's voice rose. You're twisting everything. Am I? I leaned back in my chair. You came into my parents' house and insulted my child. Called her weird. Suggested she needs help. Blamed me for her personality. All while your own sons are facing expulsion for systematic academic fraud. They're not being expelled. But Jennifer's voice lacked conviction. Not yet. I picked up my fork again. The disciplinary hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, isn't it? 3 o'clock? In the headmaster's conference room. Dead silence. Mark stood up. How do you know the details of a confidential school matter? Maybe I'm better informed than you thought. I took a sip of water. Maybe my little job isn't as insignificant as Jennifer believes. What are you talking about? Jennifer's voice had gone shrill. My mother leaned forward. Sarah, what's going on? Mom, you know I work at Westbrook Academy, right? You've known for 2 years. You're an administrative assistant. Jennifer grabbed onto that. You file papers. Is that what you think? I smiled. Did you actually ask what my position was? Or did you just assume? The color drained from Jennifer's face. You're not. I'm not an administrative assistant. I let the words settle. I'm the director of academic affairs. I oversee all disciplinary matters related to academic integrity. Every case of plagiarism, cheating, or fraud crosses my desk. Mark sat down heavily. One of the twins made a small sound. Which means, I continued, my voice perfectly calm, I've reviewed every piece of evidence against your sons. The paper trail of purchased essays. The pattern of identical wrong answers on tests, suggesting shared answer keys. The suspicious browser history on their school-issued laptops. The statements from 3 different teachers who noticed the discrepancies. Jennifer opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. I've read the essays they bought. Actually, pretty well written, which makes it more obvious they didn't write them, given their previous work samples. I've examined the test papers. I've interviewed the witnesses. I've compiled the complete file for the disciplinary board. You can't be on that board. Mark found his voice. Your family. It's a conflict of interest. You're absolutely right. I nodded. That's why I recused myself from voting. But I still prepared the evidence. And trust me, it's comprehensive. Sarah. My mother's voice was faint. You never said. Nobody asked. I looked around the table. Everyone assumed I was just Jennifer's less successful little sister. The one with the weird kid in the office job. Nobody bothered to ask for details. Tom rubbed his face. This is insane. What's insane is Jennifer spending years making passive-aggressive comments about my daughter while her own children were systematically cheating their way through one of the state's best private schools. Kept my tone even. Emily might be different. She might be quiet and artistic and introverted. But she's authentic. And she's mine. And I'm done listening to anyone criticize her. Emily was looking at me now, her eyes wide. The hearing on Tuesday will determine whether your sons are expelled or merely suspended. I directed this at Jennifer and Mark. Given the severity and repetition of the violations, the board is leaning toward expulsion. They'll also likely be required to report this to any future schools or colleges they apply to. You can't let this happen. Jennifer's voice broke. They're your nephews. I'm not on the board. I told you that. I stood up, taking my plate and Emily's. But even if I were, academic integrity isn't negotiable. Actions have consequences. You should appreciate that. You were just lecturing me about the real world. Sarah, please. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. They made a mistake. They're just kids. So is Emily. And you called her weird. To her face. At a family dinner. I carried the plates toward the kitchen. You want to talk about better parenting? Start by teaching your sons that cheating is wrong. That buying your way through school is fraud. That integrity matters more than grades. I was just joking about Emily. Jennifer followed me. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I set the plates in the sink. You've made comments like that for years. About how she dresses. How she plays. How she learns. You've questioned my parenting in front of the whole family more times than I can count. I'm sorry. Her voice was small now. I am. I shouldn't have said those things. No, you shouldn't have. I turned to face her. And maybe if you'd spent less time criticizing my child and more time paying attention to your own, you'd have noticed they were cheating. That's not fair. Isn't it? I crossed my arms. You were so focused on appearances, honor roll, soccer captain, student council, that you never questioned how they maintained those achievements. You cared more about status than character. Mark appeared in the doorway. What do we do? You show up Tuesday at 3. You let your sons face the consequences of their choices. You stop buying their way through life. I walked past him back to the dining room. And you never ever criticize my daughter again. Emily was still at the table, but she was sitting straighter now. The curtain of hair had been pushed back from her face. Ready to go, sweetheart? I held out my hand. He took it standing up. Are we leaving? We are. I looked at my parents. Thank you for dinner, Mom. We'll see ourselves out. Sarah, wait. My father stood. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I helped Emily with her coat. Jennifer made her position clear. She thinks Emily's weird and I'm a bad parent. I made my position clear. I won't tolerate anyone insulting my child. But family, my mother started. Family doesn't mean accepting cruelty. I zipped Emily's coat. It doesn't mean letting people tear down a 10-year-old girl who's done nothing wrong. Emily is kind, creative, intelligent, and honest. If that makes her weird, then I'm proud of her weirdness. Emily squeezed my hand. As for Jennifer's boys, the disciplinary process will continue as it would for any other students. I picked up my purse. The evidence speaks for itself. The board will make their decision based on policy and precedent, not family relations. You're really going to let them be expelled? Jennifer's voice was desperate. I'm not letting anything happen. They made their choices. I opened the front door. You know what Emily does when she has a hard assignment? She asks for help. She goes to the library. She reads extra books. She works on it until she understands. She doesn't cheat. She doesn't take shortcuts. And maybe that's why her grades aren't perfect, but they're real. They're earned. The cold November air hit us as we stepped onto the porch. That's the difference between our children, Jennifer. Mine has integrity. Yours have trophies built on lies. I closed the door behind us. In the car, Emily was quiet for several minutes as I drove. Finally she spoke. Mom. Yes, honey. Am I weird? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You're different. Different isn't weird. Different is just different. But the other kids aren't you. Some people are loud and social. Some people are quiet and thoughtful. Both are okay. I turned onto our street. Your aunt was wrong to say those things. And I should have shut it down years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. It's okay. No, it's not. Adults are supposed to protect kids, not tear them down. I pulled into our driveway. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, Emily. And I love every part of you. She unbuckled her seatbelt. Do you really work at the boys' school? I do. Are they really in trouble? Yes. Will they really be expelled? I turned to face her. Probably. What they did was serious. They cheated on multiple assignments and tests over several months. They broke the school's rules and their own word. That's sad. It is. I touched her hand. But it's also a consequence of their choices. Sometimes people have to face the results of what they've done. That's how they learn. Aunt Jennifer was really mean tonight. She was. And she was wrong. I squeezed her hand. Come on. Let's go inside and you can show me what you've been drawing this week. Her face brightened. I finished the series about the forest guardian. I can't wait to see it. We went inside together, leaving the judgment and cruelty behind in my parents' dining room. Emily's drawings were spread across the kitchen table. Intricate, imaginative scenes full of detail and emotion. She explained each one with an enthusiasm I rarely saw from her. My phone buzzed with text. My mother. My brother. Jennifer, of course. I silenced it and focused on my daughter. She wasn't weird. She was creative. She wasn't troubled. She was thoughtful. She wasn't falling behind. She was moving at her own pace, developing her own talents, finding her own path. And anyone who couldn't see that didn't deserve a place in her life. Tuesday's hearing would happen regardless of family pressure. The evidence was clear, the violations documented, the policies established. Jennifer's boys would face consequences. But tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was about Emily understanding that she was valued, protected, and loved exactly as she was. I'd been silent too long, letting comments slide to keep family peace. That ended today. Emily deserved better than a mother who prioritized politeness over her well-being. This one's my favorite. Emily pointed to a drawing of a girl with long dark hair sitting under a tree, surrounded by forest creatures. She's quiet, so the animals trust her. The loud people scare them away, but she stays still and they come to her. It's beautiful, honey. She's different from everyone else. But the animals don't care. They like her anyway. I pulled her close. The right people will always appreciate what makes you special. My phone buzzed again. Jennifer probably. Or Mark. Or my mother trying to mediate. I turned it off completely. They could wait. My daughter couldn't. The birthday cake sat untouched on the table as my daughter Emma stared at the pile of gifts in front of my sister's children. She was turning 8 today and I'd worked double shifts for 3 weeks to afford the art supplies she'd asked for. The second-hand winter coat I'd found at the thrift store was wrapped carefully in newspaper because I couldn't afford wrapping paper this month. My sister Victoria swept into my tiny apartment like she owned it, her designer heels clicking against my worn linoleum floor. Her twins, Mason and Madison, followed behind, carrying shopping bags from stores I couldn't even walk past without feeling out of place. "Sorry we're late," Victoria announced, not sounding sorry at all. The traffic from the country club was absolutely dreadful. My mother arrived next, kissing Victoria's cheek but barely glancing at Emma. "Victoria, darling, you look stunning. Is that the new Chanel spring collection?" Victoria preened, spinning to show off the suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Robert surprised me last week." My father walked in last, his eyes immediately finding the modest cake I'd baked myself. "Store-bought would have been better, Jennifer. But I suppose you did your best." I swallowed the familiar sting. Emma helped me decorate it. She's very proud of it. "That's nice, dear," Mom said absently, already moving toward Victoria's children. "Now where are my favorite grandchildren? Come give Grandma hugs." Emma's small hand slipped into mine. I squeezed it gently, trying to pour all my love into that simple gesture. "Can we do presents now?" Madison asked, bouncing excitedly. "Of course, sweetheart." Victoria pulled out perfectly wrapped boxes from her designer bags. "These are for Mason and Madison. We couldn't wait for their actual birthday next month, so we're celebrating today." My stomach dropped. This was Emma's birthday party. "Victoria," I started carefully, "maybe we could do Emma's presents first? Since it's her birthday." Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, Jennifer. The kids don't mind sharing the celebration. Right, Emma?" Emma nodded, her eyes already filling with tears she was too polite to shed. Mason tore into his first present, revealing the latest gaming console. Madison opened hers to find a designer handbag, child-sized but unmistakably authentic. Present after present emerged. Tablets, jewelry, expensive clothes with tags still attached, showing prices that made me dizzy. "Look what Mommy and Daddy got you." Victoria cooed. "Only the best for our babies." My father nodded approvingly. "That's how you provide for children, Jennifer. You should take notes." "I provide what I can," I said quietly. "Emma has everything she needs." "Needs and deserves are two different things," Mom added, straightening Madison's new necklace. "Every child deserves nice things." After 30 minutes of watching my daughter's face grow paler, Victoria finally gestured toward Emma's small pile of presents. I suppose we should let the birthday girl open her gifts now. What did you manage this year, Jennifer? I handed Emma her present, the newspaper crinkling. Go ahead, sweetie. Emma carefully unwrapped the art supplies, her face lighting up genuinely. Mom, these are the watercolors I wanted. And the brushes. They're perfect for your paintings, I said, my heart swelling despite everything. Victoria leaned over, examining the boxes. Oh, store brand. Well, I suppose they'll do for a hobby. Actually, I said, pulling out the coat, this is your main present, Emma. I know your old one was getting small. Emma held up the navy pea coat, its second-hand origins obvious in the slightly faded fabric and replaced buttons. But I'd spent hours cleaning it and it was warm and sturdy. It's beautiful, Mom, Emma whispered, but her voice cracked. Victoria laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the room. Jennifer, you can't be serious. That's clearly used. It's perfectly good, I defended. It'll keep her warm all winter. Second-hand clothes for a birthday present? My father shook his head. That's just sad. Victoria pulled out her phone, snapping a photo. Wait until the country club sees this. Poor kids get poor gifts, I suppose. It's just the way of the world. Madison tugged her mother's sleeve. Mommy, why is Emma's coat old? Because Aunt Jennifer makes different choices than we do, darling, Victoria said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Some people prioritize career and success. Others just get by. My mother sighed dramatically. If you just accepted that job at Robert's firm when he offered, Jennifer. But no, you had to be independent. That job required a finance degree I don't have, I said, my hands clenching. Details, Victoria waved dismissively. Robert could have worked around it. But you were too proud to accept family help. And look where that pride got you, giving your daughter trash for her birthday. Emma's tears finally spilled over, silent tracks down her cheeks as she clutched her second-hand coat. It's not trash, I said, my voice harder now. Isn't it, though? Victoria gestured around my small apartment. This whole place screams failure, Jennifer. The cracked ceiling, the furniture from who knows where, the fact that you're still renting at 32 years old. When are you going to accept that you're just not cut out for success? I have a job, I said. I support my daughter. Barely, my father interjected. What is it this month? Still that assistant position. I work in corporate, I said carefully. Victoria laughed again. Corporate what? Corporate coffee making? Corporate file organizing? Come on, Jennifer, we all know you're probably answering phones or something equally menial. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Multiple notifications, all marked urgent. Must be nice to check personal messages during family time, Mom sniffed. Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at it, her expression shifting to surprise. Oh. It's from Robert's company. I applied for that VP of marketing position last month. She answered, putting it on speaker. Hello. Mrs. Harrison? This is Sandra from Human Resources at Harrison Industries. Yes. Victoria's face lit up. I've been waiting for your call. I assume this is about my VP position. Pause. Actually, Mrs. Harrison, we're calling to inform you that your application has been rejected. Victoria's smile froze. Excuse me. Your qualifications don't meet our current requirements. Additionally, the new CEO has implemented stricter hiring policies. We appreciate your interest, but we won't be moving forward. New CEO? Victoria's voice pitched higher. Robert didn't mention a new CEO. Who is it? The announcement goes public tomorrow morning. I'm not at liberty to discuss details. Thank you for your time. The line went dead. Victoria stared at her phone. What new CEO? Robert owns that company. My phone buzzed again. I looked down at the message from the board. Emergency meeting in 1 hour. Media questions about transition. That's strange, my father frowned. Robert's been CEO for 15 years. Maybe he's retiring? Mom suggested. Victoria was already dialing. Robert? What's this about a new CEO? Some woman from HR just rejected my application and, what? Slow down. What do you mean you sold the company? We all watched as Victoria's face went from confused to pale to horrified. Majority shareholder? Since when? Robert, you told me you owned. She pulled the phone from her ear, Robert's voice audible even from across the room. Don't you dare hang up on me. But the line was already dead. My phone rang. I recognized the number from our legal team. I need to take this. Excuse me. I stepped into my bedroom, closing the door. Jennifer Chen speaking. Miss Chen, we have 3 media outlets requesting interviews about tomorrow's announcement. How would you like us to proceed? Standard protocol. Press release at 9 a.m., interviews after the stock market opens. Make sure all documentation is filed. Already done. Congratulations again, Miss Chen. The board is thrilled to have you as CEO. I hung up and returned to the living room. Victoria was frantically scrolling through her phone, my parents hovering over her shoulder. It's already on the business news sites, Victoria said, her voice shaking. Harrison Industries announces leadership transition. Majority shareholder takes control. CEO Robert Harrison stepping down. But it doesn't say who the new CEO is. Maybe it's that Chinese investor Robert mentioned last year, my father said. The one buying up tech companies? I cleared my throat. Actually, about that. All eyes turned to me. I held up my phone showing the press release draft. The announcement goes live tomorrow at 9 a.m. But I can tell you now. The new CEO of Harrison Industries is Jennifer Chen. The room went completely silent. Victoria laughed, but it sounded hysterical. That's not funny, Jennifer. I'm not joking. I opened my email, turning the screen to show the official board resolution. I've been the majority shareholder for 6 years. Robert knew. He agreed to stay on as public-facing CEO while I built my position. As of tomorrow morning, I'm taking operational control. My mother's face had gone white. That's impossible. You're an assistant. I was never an assistant, Mom. I'm the director of strategic acquisitions. I've been working in private equity since before Emma was born. The corporate job, you all mocked? I've been buying controlling interests in mid-size companies and restructuring them. Harrison Industries was my largest acquisition. Victoria's hands were shaking. You're lying. You live in this tiny apartment, you buy second-hand clothes. Because I invest every extra dollar, I said calmly. My salary is 7 figures, but I live modestly because I'm building generational wealth for Emma, not showing off at country clubs. My father sank into a chair. 7 figures? This year's compensation package is $2.3 million, not including stock options, I confirmed. I could afford a mansion, Dad. I choose not to. Emma and I are happy here. But the thrift store coat, Mom gestured weakly, is a perfectly good coat that Emma likes, I said. She doesn't need designer labels to know she's loved, unlike some children who get showered with expensive gifts to make up for absent parents. Victoria flinched. The job Robert offered me 7 years ago? I continued. I turned it down because I was negotiating to buy 40% of his company. He needed capital to expand. I provided it. Over the years, I acquired more shares from smaller investors. Robert maintained operational control and his CEO title, but I own 51%. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the transition team. Victoria, about your job application, I said, meeting my sister's eyes. You were rejected because your resume listed 3 years of marketing consultant work that Robert has confirmed was actually you showing up to his office twice a month to have lunch. You have no actual marketing experience, no degree in the field, and no portfolio of work. You don't meet our minimum requirements. Robert said I could. Robert doesn't make hiring decisions anymore, I said. I do. And we don't practice nepotism at Harrison Industries. Victoria's phone rang again. She answered it, listened for a moment, then went even paler. The country club? Yes, this is Victoria Harrison. What do you mean our membership is under review? She listened, her face crumbling. My husband's company sponsored our membership? And if his company connection changes? I understand. She hung up, tears now streaming down her face. We're losing our country club membership. Robert's corporate sponsorship is being terminated. Standard cost-cutting measures, I said. Harrison Industries will no longer fund executive lifestyle expenses, country club memberships, luxury car allowances, personal shopping budgets, all eliminated. If Robert wants those things, he can pay for them himself on his new salary. New salary? My father asked weakly. He's staying on as a senior consultant at $180,000 annually. Quite generous, considering he'll mostly be transitioning clients and institutional knowledge, but significantly less than his previous $1.2 million. Victoria was openly sobbing now. We can't afford our house on $180,000. The mortgage alone is $8,000 a month. You'll need to downsize, I said simply. Many people live comfortably on far less. My mother finally found her voice. Jennifer, you can't do this. Victoria is your sister. Victoria called my daughter poor in front of everyone, I said, my calm finally cracking slightly. She mocked a second-hand coat given with love. She spent years putting me down, putting Emma down, acting superior because her husband had a title that existed because I allowed it. I walked over to Emma, who was still holding her coat, her eyes wide. This coat is special, I told her, kneeling down. Not because it's new or expensive, but because I chose it thinking about you. The color matches your favorite dress. The buttons are shaped like little flowers because you love flowers. And it will keep you warm when we walk to the park to feed the ducks. Emma threw her arms around my neck. I love it, Mommy. I love it so much. I held her close, then stood facing my family. You're all welcome to leave now, I said. Emma and I have a birthday to celebrate. Properly this time. Victoria grabbed her bags, her children following, confused, behind her. My parents exchanged glances, my mother opening her mouth to speak. Jennifer, surely we can discuss. There's nothing to discuss, Mom. You've made your priorities clear for years. I've made mine clear today. They left in silence, the door closing behind them with a soft click. Emma looked up at me, her tear-stained face breaking into the first genuine smile of the day. Are you really a CEO, Mommy? I really am, sweetheart. That's so cool. She hugged her coat. Can I still wear my coat? Even though you're rich. We're comfortable, Emma, not rich. And yes, you can absolutely wear your coat. Do you like it? I love it. The buttons are perfect. She paused. Mommy? Are Aunt Victoria's kids going to be okay? My heart squeezed. Even after everything, she was worried about them. They'll be fine, I assured her. They'll learn that family is more important than things, just like you already know. Emma nodded, then looked at her art supplies. Can we paint now? Just us. Absolutely. I set up her new watercolors at the kitchen table. What do you want to paint first? A picture of us, she said. In our apartment. Because I like our home. As Emma painted, her second-hand coat draped over her chair and her store-brand watercolors creating something beautiful. My phone continued buzzing with messages from lawyers, board members, and media contacts. Tomorrow the business world would know my name. Tonight I was just Mom, celebrating my daughter's birthday the way it should have been celebrated from the start. Poor kids get poor gifts, Victoria had said. She had no idea what true wealth looked like. The restaurant was one of those upscale places where Margaret liked to hold court, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the marina, white tablecloths so crisp they could cut paper, and a wine list that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The hostess had looked at us with that practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes when we arrived, probably taking in Emma's thrift store jacket and my off-season dress. She'd chosen the place specifically, I knew. Margaret always did when she wanted to make a point about success versus what she called settling for less. I'd arrived early with my daughter Emma, who was 13 and already developing that painful teenage awareness of social hierarchies. She'd asked me 3 times if her jacket was okay during the drive over. Once while we were parking, then again in the elevator. It was from a thrift store, clean and perfectly fine, navy blue with silver buttons that she'd loved when we found it. But next to her cousin's designer everything, I could see her starting to shrink into herself, shoulders curving inward the way kids do when they're trying to take up less space in the world. Margaret swept in 20 minutes late with her husband, David, and their 2 kids, Trevor and Madison. Both were in their early 20s, both driving cars that cost more than I'd made in the last 2 years combined. They made sure everyone knew it within the first 5 minutes of sitting down, the way people do when material possessions are their primary source of identity. Sorry we're late, Margaret said, not sounding sorry at all. Her Chanel bag hit the table with an intentional thud. Madison was deciding between the BMW and the Mercedes. First world problems, right? Though I suppose not everyone deals with those kinds of decisions. Madison laughed, tossing her professionally highlighted hair, the kind of highlights that cost $300 at a salon. I went with the Beamer. The Mercedes felt too showy. I like to keep things understated. I watched Emma's hand go to her jacket hem, rubbing the fabric between her fingers. That small gesture nearly broke me, but I kept my face neutral. I'd learned that skill over many years of family gatherings. Emma, sweetie, you're growing so fast, Margaret said, leaning over to air kiss near my daughter's cheek. That jacket still fits you? I remember you wearing it last year. It still fits, Emma said quietly. Well, that's good. Practical. Margaret's smile had that sharp edge I knew too well. Not everyone can afford to keep up with fashion. Some people have to be more careful with money. The waiter appeared, saving me from having to respond. We ordered, Margaret naturally choosing the most expensive items and making a show of ordering wine that cost $140 a bottle. I ordered modestly. Emma asked for water and the cheapest pasta dish. Just water. Trevor smirked. Not even a soda? Water's fine, Emma said. Trevor, don't tease your cousin, Margaret said, but her tone suggested she found it amusing. Not everyone has the same opportunities you do. The food arrived, and for a few minutes there was blessed silence, broken only by the clink of silverware on expensive china. Then David started talking about the business expansion he and Margaret were planning. A second location for their boutique consulting firm. He talked about market penetration, growth trajectories, and capturing the millennial demographic. He spoke in that corporate language that sounds impressive but says very little, throwing buzzwords around like confetti at a parade. We're looking at a significant expansion, David said, cutting into his $40 stake. A $600,000 investment. Really going to put us on the map. Regional recognition, maybe even national if things go the way we're projecting. That's ambitious, I said, keeping my voice neutral. We've got the clients, we've got the reputation, we've got 5-year projections showing consistent growth. We just need the capital. Margaret waved her hand dismissively, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. The bank's processing our loan application now. It should be approved any day. They'd be idiots not to jump on this opportunity. Our business model is solid gold. Trevor leaned back in his chair. Dad's letting me manage the new location. I'll be making 6 figures before I'm 25. That's wonderful, I said. What do you do again? Madison asked as if she didn't already know. We'd been through this at every family gathering for the past 3 years. I work at First National Bank, I said. Like a teller? She said, the way someone might say like a janitor. Something like that. Margaret jumped in and I knew what was coming. I'd heard variations of this speech my entire adult life. You know, Sarah, I've been meaning to talk to you about this. I don't want to overstep, but as your older sister, I feel responsible for giving you some guidance. I said nothing. Emma's hand was back on her jacket. The thing is, and I say this with love, you need to think about what example you're setting for Emma. Kids model their parents' behavior. If they see settling, they learn to settle. If they see ambition and success, they learn that instead. I see, I said. Look at Trevor and Madison. They've grown up watching David and me build something real. They understand what it takes to succeed. They're not afraid to reach for more. She took a sip of her expensive wine. But some kids, through no fault of their own, just absorb different lessons. They see limitations instead of possibilities. David nodded along. It's about mindset. Success breeds success. Poverty, unfortunately, often breeds more poverty. It's just statistics. Emma's face had gone red, not from anger but from shame. That look on my daughter's face, that moment when a child realizes their parent can't protect them from cruelty, burned through my chest. Some kids just stay poor like their parents, Margaret said, looking directly at Emma. It's not anyone's fault. It's just how things work. Breaking that cycle takes extraordinary effort that, frankly, most people just don't have. Trevor laughed. Harsh, Mom, but true. Madison was scrolling through her phone. Oh my God, Brittany just posted pictures of her new apartment. It's gorgeous. Must be nice to have parents who set you up for success. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I'd been expecting it. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and allowed myself a small smile. Something funny? Margaret asked. Just an email, I said. Work-related. On Sunday. See, Emma, this is what I mean. Your mom's working on her day off, probably not even getting overtime. That's the treadmill of lower-level positions. Always working, never getting ahead. I set my phone down on the table, screen up but not obvious. Actually, Margaret, speaking of work, you mentioned your loan application? Yes, it should be approved this week. Why? Which bank did you apply through? David answered. First National. They've got the best commercial rates in the area. We went through them for our first location too, but this is a much bigger loan. $600,000 is substantial. First National, I repeated. That is convenient. Why? Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly. Because I work there. As you mentioned. I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. I actually saw your application cross my desk this week. My desk? Trevor laughed. You're a teller. Tellers don't see loan applications. I used to be a teller, I said calmly. For about 6 months when I first started. Then I moved to customer service. Then loan processing. Then assistant manager. The table went quiet. Last Monday I was promoted to regional commercial loan manager. I oversee all business loan applications over $500,000 in this district. I looked at Margaret. Including yours. David's face lost color. You're joking. I'm not. Would you like me to pull it up? I have the mobile app. I reached for my phone. The application is under D. Winters Consulting Group, filed 3 weeks ago, requesting $600,000 for commercial expansion. It's currently in preliminary review. Margaret's mouth opened and closed. You never said anything about a promotion. You never asked about my actual job. You assumed. That's different. I scrolled through my phone not because I needed to but because I enjoyed the theater of it. You know what's interesting about loan applications? They require character references, employment history and financial responsibility assessments. We have excellent credit, David said quickly. You do. That's not in question. I set my phone down again. But there's something else we look at: social media presence and public behavior. When you're trusting someone with $600,000, you want to know who they are as people. How they treat others. Their values. Trevor had stopped smirking. I've been documenting these family gatherings for years, I continued, my voice perfectly even. Not secretly, just notes. Dates, quotes, witnesses. Emma's therapist suggested it might be helpful for her to process the bullying. Today's lunch, for instance. Multiple witnesses heard you tell a 13-year-old child that she'd stay poor like her parents. That's quite something to say in public. That's not what I meant, Margaret started. It's exactly what you said. I can ask the waiter to confirm if you'd like. I glanced around the restaurant. There are probably a dozen people here who heard you. Some are looking at us right now, actually. They didn't seem to like it much. The silence stretched. Emma was staring at me with wide eyes. Now about your loan, I said. The preliminary review showed some concerns. Not with your financials, they're solid, but with risk assessment. We have to consider what happens if a business relationship sours. If there's a lawsuit. If there are public relations problems. There won't be any problems, David said tightly. That's good to hear. But we also look at judgment and decision-making. For instance, someone who publicly humiliates family members, including a child, at a restaurant shows a lack of discretion and poor impulse control. Those are red flags in a business partner. Margaret's hands were shaking slightly. You can't deny our loan because of a personal disagreement. I can deny it for risk assessment reasons, which I have. Your application was flagged for additional review this morning. That adds 6 to 8 weeks to the process. Maybe longer if new concerns arise. I took another sip of water. Of course you could appeal. That would require going to my supervisor, who happens to agree with my assessment. We discussed your application at length on Friday. This is unprofessional, Trevor said. What's unprofessional is not knowing who you're talking to before you insult them. I turned to him. Your mother's loan is in jeopardy because she couldn't keep her cruelty to herself for one meal. That's not my problem. That's hers. Madison had gone pale. Mom, the lease on the new location, we already signed it. Based on loan approval you assumed was coming, I said. That's another decision-making red flag. Spending money you don't have yet. The loan committee is going to want to discuss that. David stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're leaving. Of course. Lunch is on me today. I pulled out my wallet. I make enough now to cover it. A regional manager's salary is quite comfortable. They left in a rush, Trevor and Madison trailing behind their parents. I watched them go, then looked at Emma. Her eyes were still wide, but now there was something else there. Something like hope. "Mom," she whispered. "Is that all true?" "Every word." "You're really a regional manager?" "I am. I've been for a week." I was waiting for the right time to mention it. "That was so cool," she breathed. I signaled for the check. "You know what's actually cool? Your jacket. I love that jacket. It looks great on you, and the fact that we found it for $12 makes it even better." "That's smart shopping," Aunt Margaret said. Aunt Margaret says a lot of things, most of them designed to make herself feel bigger by making others feel smaller. That's not strength. That's weakness. The waiter brought the check and I paid, leaving a generous tip. As we walked out, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Will they really not get the loan?" she asked. "Probably not. The risk assessment is legitimate. They're overextended, planning expansion based on projected income they haven't secured. That's actually a valid reason to deny the loan." I squeezed her hand. But I would have found that whether Margaret was nice or cruel, she just made it easier to see. We drove home in comfortable silence. That evening my phone rang, Margaret's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then David called. Then Margaret again. I ignored them all. The next morning I received an email from David. It was formal and stiff, apologizing for any misunderstanding and requesting reconsideration of their application. I forwarded it to my supervisor with my original assessment notes attached. Her response came back in 10 minutes. "Denied. Too many red flags." Good call. I didn't tell Emma about the email. She didn't need to know all the details. What she needed to know was that standing up for yourself matters. That quiet dignity beats loud cruelty. That her mother's job, whatever it was, had value. That Sunday we went shopping at the thrift store together. Emma picked out 3 new jackets, all for under $20 total. She wore them proudly. Margaret and David's expansion plans fell through. Without the loan, they couldn't make the lease payments on the new location. The last I heard, they were struggling to keep even the original location profitable. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being underestimated, and then proving exactly who you are when it matters most. The Sunday lunch tradition at my parents' house had been going on for 12 years, ever since my older sister Victoria had her first child. Every week, the extended family gathered around the large oak dining table in their suburban home, sharing food, stories, and what my mother called family bonds. The house itself was a statement, a 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood, filled with family photos that seemed to feature Victoria's children far more prominently than mine. But for my son Daniel and me, these lunches had become something else entirely. They had become a weekly reminder of everything we apparently weren't. Daniel was 11 years old, stocky and solid, with my build rather than his mother's slender frame. My ex-wife had left when Daniel was 3, remarried someone wealthy who owned a chain of dental practices, and rarely saw our son any more beyond the minimum required by our custody agreement. It was just the 2 of us, managing a modest life in a 2-bedroom apartment, while my sister Victoria and her husband lived in a house 3 times the size of ours and drove cars that cost more than I made in a year working as a systems analyst for a mid-sized company. Victoria had 3 children. Sophia was 13, tall and athletic, captain of her middle school volleyball team. Marcus was 12, lean and confident, a competitive swimmer who trained 6 days a week. Emma was 10, graceful and poised, taking ballet lessons at an expensive studio downtown. All 3 were on competitive sports teams, took music lessons twice weekly, and attended the best schools in the district, where class sizes were small and resources abundant. And all 3 had learned from their mother and grandmother that they were superior to their cousin Daniel in every measurable way, though the measurements they used were carefully selected to ensure their advantage. "I got an A- on my history test," Sophia announced, waving her phone to show the grade notification. "Mr. Peterson said it was one of the best essays he's read all semester." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother gushed. "You work so hard. I'm so proud of you." Marcus jumped in immediately. "I got a B+ on my science project. The teacher said my presentation skills were excellent." "Both of you are so accomplished," my mother beamed. "It's wonderful to see young people taking their education seriously." Daniel continued eating his mashed potatoes quietly. He had learned long ago that speaking up at these lunches only invited comparisons he would lose, at least in my mother's eyes. My mother turned to him, her expression shifting from pride to something that looked like concern but felt like judgment. "And how are your grades, Daniel? Are you keeping up with your schoolwork?" "He's doing fine," I said before Daniel could answer. "Fine isn't excellent," my mother replied. "At his age he should be pushing himself. Maybe if he focused less on eating and more on studying he'd do better. Exercise and discipline build character." Daniel's fork stopped moving. His face flushed red, that particular shade that meant he was fighting tears. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed his plate away from himself, the food barely touched. "Mom," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. "I'm just trying to help," she said. "Children need guidance. They need to understand that success requires sacrifice. Victoria's children understand that. They're disciplined, focused, healthy." Victoria smiled, that thin, superior smile she'd perfected over the years. "The kids do work very hard. We've instilled strong values in them. Academic excellence, physical fitness, personal responsibility. Is that right?" I asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "Let's talk about academic excellence, then." I opened the folder and spread several documents across the table. Test results, grade reports, standardized assessment scores. All of them had Daniel's name at the top. "Daniel's most recent math test," I said, pointing to the first sheet. 100%. Perfect score. The teacher wrote a note saying it was the highest mark in the class and that Daniel finished 20 minutes early, then helped other students with their problems. My mother picked up the paper, her reading glasses sliding down her nose as she studied it. "His English literature exam," I continued, sliding another sheet forward. 98%. The teacher commented that his analysis of the novel showed remarkable depth of understanding for a sixth grader. Victoria's smile froze on her face. Her children went quiet. "Science test," I said, adding another paper to the pile. 100%. Bonus questions included. The teacher noted that Daniel's explanation of the scientific method was more thorough than the textbooks. "History test," I added, sliding over another sheet. 97%. The teacher said his essay on the Industrial Revolution demonstrated college-level analytical thinking. I pulled out a larger document. "These are his standardized test scores from last month. 99th percentile in mathematics nationwide. 97th percentile in reading comprehension. 98th percentile in science. 96th percentile in writing." That means Daniel scored higher than 99 out of every 100 students his age in the entire country in math. I let that sink in for a moment. The average percentile for gifted program qualification is 95th. Daniel exceeded that in every single category. These scores qualified him for advanced programs at 3 different universities. The table had gone completely silent. My father, who usually stayed neutral in family conflicts, leaned forward to look at the documents. "For comparison," I said, looking directly at Victoria, "would you like to share Sophia's most recent test scores? Or Marcus's standardized results?" Victoria's face turned red. "My children do very well in school." "I'm sure they do," I said. "Sophia's A- is commendable. Marcus's B+ shows effort. But let's be accurate about who's excelling and who's just doing adequately." I pulled out another document. This is a letter from Daniel's school principal. It's a recommendation for the district's Gifted and Talented program. The principal writes that Daniel is among the top 1% of students she has encountered in her 20-year career. She's recommending him for advanced placement in 3 subjects next year. My mother stared at the papers spread across the table as if she were seeing them for the first time, which in a sense she was. I had never brought Daniel's achievements to these lunches before because they were never welcomed, never celebrated, always dismissed or minimized. "There's more," I said. "Daniel was selected for the state mathematics competition next month. He'll be competing against 8th and 9th graders. His math teacher says he has a real chance of placing in the top 10. I laid out another letter. This is from the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. Daniel qualified for their summer program based on his SAT scores. It's a program specifically designed for exceptionally gifted students who score in the top percentiles on college entrance exams while still in elementary and middle school. SAT scores? My father interjected. He's 11. The program has 6th graders take the SAT to assess their abilities, I explained. Daniel scored a 650 on the mathematics section. That's higher than the national average for high school seniors taking the test. For context, the average SAT math score for seniors is around 520. Daniel, at 11 years old, scored 130 points above that average. Victoria was scrolling through her phone now, probably trying to verify whether what I was saying was even possible. So when you ask if he's keeping up with his schoolwork, I said, turning back to my mother, the answer is that he's not just keeping up. He's excelling. He's surpassing. He's demonstrating abilities that put him in the top fraction of a percent of students his age. Then why didn't you tell us? My mother asked, her voice smaller than before. Because every time I try you change the subject, I said. Last month when I mentioned Daniel's math competition selection, you immediately started talking about Sophia's volleyball tournament. 2 months ago when I brought up his science fair award, you asked if he was eating properly and suggested I limit his portions. I picked up the papers and tapped them into a neat stack. You've spent years telling Daniel directly and indirectly that he's not good enough. That if he just tried harder, ate less, exercised more, disciplined himself better, maybe then he could be successful like his cousins. But the truth is he's been more successful academically than any child at this table. You just never bothered to notice because you were too focused on his weight. Daniel was staring at his empty plate, his shoulders tense. I put my hand on his shoulder. Your comment about eating less and doing better, I said to my mother, was based on an assumption. You assumed that because Daniel is heavier than your other grandchildren he must be lazy, undisciplined, unsuccessful. You saw his body and decided you knew everything about his character and capabilities. I didn't mean it that way, my mother protested. Yes you did, I said. You've meant it that way for years. Every comment about his weight, every suggestion about diet and exercise, every comparison to his cousins, all of it has been based on the belief that his body reflects his worth. But Daniel's worth has nothing to do with his weight. His intelligence, his kindness, his work ethic, his achievements, those are what matter. And all of them are exceptional. Victoria finally spoke. We've always been supportive of Daniel. Have you? I asked. As I have a different memory. I remember last Christmas when Marcus got a new gaming system and a gift card worth $300 for getting honor roll, and Daniel, who had straight A's in all honors classes, got a book about healthy eating habits and a gym membership coupon. I remember Thanksgiving when Sophia's science project about plant growth was displayed prominently on the mantle for everyone to admire, while Daniel's award-winning project about renewable energy stayed in his backpack because nobody asked to see it. I remember Easter when you took all the grandchildren out for ice cream to celebrate the end of the school year, except you suggested Daniel get a salad instead. My father cleared his throat. We may have shown some favoritism, he admitted quietly. That wasn't right. It wasn't just favoritism, I said. It was erasure. Daniel's accomplishments have been invisible to you because you decided years ago what kind of child he was. Fat meant lazy. Lazy meant unsuccessful. Unsuccessful meant unworthy of attention or praise. I stood up, gesturing for Daniel to do the same. He grabbed his jacket quickly, clearly ready to leave. We won't be coming to Sunday lunches anymore, I announced. Not until you can treat Daniel with the same respect and celebration you show his cousins. Not until you can acknowledge his achievements without immediately pivoting to criticism about his appearance. Please don't do this, my mother said, tears forming in her eyes. We're family. Then act like it, I said. Daniel is your grandson. He's brilliant, hardworking, and kind. He deserves to be celebrated, not criticized. He deserves to eat Sunday lunch without having his body analyzed and his worth questioned. We walked toward the door. Behind us, I could hear my mother crying and Victoria trying to defend herself to our father. The cousins were silent, probably processing what they had just witnessed. In the car, Daniel was quiet for several minutes. Then he said, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," I replied. "You deserve to have someone defend you. You deserve to have your grandmother know the truth." "Do you think she'll change?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. But I know we won't go back until she does. You're too important to me to let anyone, even family, make you feel worthless. He nodded slowly, looking out the window. The math competition is in 3 weeks. Will they come watch? If they're invited, I said. And if they promise to be supportive, not critical. Okay, he said softly. 3 days later my mother called. She apologized without excuses or justifications. She asked if she could attend one of Daniel's tutoring sessions, where he helped younger students with math. He wanted to see him in his element, she said. She wanted to understand the child she had failed to see. I let Daniel decide. He agreed cautiously. My mother showed up at the library where Daniel volunteered twice a week. She sat in the back and watched as he patiently explained fractions to a struggling third grader, breaking down complex concepts into understandable pieces. She saw other parents thank him, saw the librarian praise his teaching ability, and saw the way younger kids lit up when he helped them understand something difficult. Afterward, she took us both out for ice cream, real ice cream, not frozen yogurt or sorbet or any of the healthier alternatives she usually suggested. She asked Daniel about the math competition, about his classes, about what he wanted to study in college someday. She didn't mention his weight once. It wasn't perfect. Old habits resurfaced sometimes. But there was effort now, an awareness that words mattered and that achievement came in many forms. The Sunday lunches eventually resumed, but the dynamic had shifted. Daniel's successes were acknowledged alongside his cousins. His achievements were celebrated, not minimized. And when he won 3rd place in the state mathematics competition, beating students 3 and 4 years older than him, my mother was there in the audience. She cheered louder than anyone when his name was called, and she cried with pride when he accepted his award. It had taken confrontation and consequences for her to see what had been in front of her all along. But she saw it now. And that, finally, was enough.